Hello, I'm Milosz Rewiński, and this is Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you all you need to know. Last Saturday, the world witnessed an unprecedented event. Iran launched an attack on its own behalf, and boasting to the world of the many missiles and drones that it sent at targets in Israel. Before this weekend, Iran usually relied on proxies for similar efforts, including with dozens of Islamic militias and organizations at its disposal that even the lowest CIA flunky knows Tehran controls. But now, Iran itself has become the proxy. Whose proxy it is, you may ask? Well, who benefits the most from Iran's latest exploits? Well, Russia, of course. Russia is like a broke guy at a casino, pushy and desperate. It seeks to exploit every bit of chaos on the international stage to its own advantage, which is plain as day once you take a closer look at news headlines from the past couple of days. Since Saturday, Ukraine has been basically forgotten by news outlets, although attacks using Iranian missiles and drones are basically an everyday occurrence in the country. In a recent statement, John Kirby, the spokesperson for the US National Security Council, has said that Washington will not help Ukraine intercept Russian missiles the way it did Israel during the attack from Iran.
If the US and allies can help shoot down Iranian drones over Israel, why can't they do the same over Ukraine?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming too. Look, different conflicts, different airspace, different threat picture. The president has been clear since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine. The United States is not going to be involved in that conflict in a combat role, and we haven't. We have been providing Ukraine the tools that they need to help defend their airspace, and unfortunately, we can't do that right now because we don't have that national security supplemental funding that.
Look, to some extent, Kirby is correct. Providing a country as big as Ukraine with a missile defense umbrella like the Iron Dome system is impossible in wartime conditions. But his statement comes in a specific context. Right now, Ukraine's missile defense stocks are rapidly dwindling. The Russians have taken out the Iris-T launcher from Germany, and Ukrainian Patriot systems have to move around to evade Russian fire because they run out of ammo. They are no longer providing cover, they are now a target themselves. Some voices in Ukraine are now openly saying that the country might not survive the combination of US election campaign and the impossibilism flowing from Paris and Berlin. Meanwhile, in the Caucasus, a key democracy in the region is in danger of sliding into illiberalism. Georgia, despite a recent conflict and losing a considerable part of its territory to Russia, is still drifting towards Moscow. It's no secret that Tbilisi has become something of a conveyor belt, allowing Russia to sidestep sanctions placed upon it. But that's not all. The Georgian Dream Party, now in its third term in power, draws a lot of its inspiration from Putin and has now decided to transplant the Kremlin's foreign agent bill onto Georgian soil. In Russia, this bill wiped out the rest of the NGOs and independent press outlets still operating in the country. In Georgia, the opposition is still putting up a fight, sometimes literally so. Parliament in Tbilisi turning into the next iteration of Mortal Kombat. Cited by Ukrainska Pravda, the Georgian opposition MP that hit a fellow lawmaker said after the tussle itself was over, "I grew tired with all this and finally punched this Russian agent in the face. I always try to be fair with the Georgian Dream folks, but they are pulling us closer to Russia. This is not a time to sit at home. We need to be out on the streets. We need to kick them out, along with their pro-Russian laws." End of quote. Responding to Washington's call not to strike Russian oil refineries, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said that he saw no reason to abandon these efforts and emphasized that attacking these installations only affects the Russian and not the international energy market. According to Kiev's chief diplomat, the relentless Russian attacks have been killing a growing number of civilians whom Ukraine cannot protect due to the lack of air defense systems. He also noted that, and I quote, "If there are no Patriot batteries, no aid package, and we are still being asked for something, then we have nothing to talk about."
Я не вірю, і я думаю, ніхто в Україні не повірить, що величезна армія Сполучених Штатів Америки не має принаймні однієї батареї «Патріот», якою можна врятувати на мільярди доларів інфраструктуру в Україні і безцінні українське життя. Я повторюю своє запитання просто до вас. От ви вірите, що Америка не може зараз дати одну батарею? А якщо партнери кажуть, ми вам даємо 7 батарей завтра патріотів, але у нас до вас прохання, можна не робити ось цього, ось цього і ось цього? Тоді є предмет для розмови. А якщо у тебе немає цих батарей, немає пакету допомоги, і при цьому тебе щось просять не робити, ну, тоді немає предмету. Тоді про що говорити? Тоді кожен виживає як може.
Mysterious explosions at Russian oil installations have been quite frequent recently. The Russians say they were all drone attacks, and the Ukrainians have been happy to claim at least some responsibility for the strikes, some of which have hit refineries over 1,000 kilometers away from the Russian-Ukrainian border. Additionally, the Financial Times has recently said that Washington is concerned with a potential fuel price uptick in an election year, which could negatively affect President Biden's re-election prospects. The Americans' calls for the attacks to stop have outraged the Ukrainians, who believe the strikes to be well justified, given Moscow's relentless bombing campaign targeting civilian infrastructure and residential areas across the embattled country. Furthermore, Kiev believes the attacks necessary to raise the price of continued Russian aggression and make it clear to the Russian public they cannot feel safe anywhere until the war started by Putin finally comes to an end. In an interview with the Dialogue Works channel, veteran CIA analyst Larry Johnson said that all signs seem to suggest that World War III has already begun. The answer came after he was asked for an assessment of the fighting in Ukraine, Iran's recent strikes on Israel, the conflict in the Gaza Strip, and potential escalation around Taiwan.
Have a war in Ukraine right now, a conflict in Gaza right now between Iran and Israel. I don't know if we're going to have a new conflict in Taiwan. This is a world war. It seems that we're approaching a world war.
Yeah. It's world war by proxy right now. And you've got the many in the United States who are just chomping at the bit that they want to attack China. And by God, we need to drop nukes, drop nukes on the Palestinians. Just kill all those Palestinians. And, I think at some point, the folks in, Yemen's already fighting. Saudi's going to come under increased pressure to do something. They can't have it both ways because it looks like even though they restored relations with Iran, they're still trying to be more in the Western camp. And that's not going to work.
So who's this Larry Johnson guy, you may ask? He was employed by the CIA from 1985 to 1989, rising through the ranks to serve as the regional analyst for Central America, specializing in transport. Johnson left the CIA in October 1989 to join the State Department's Bureau of Counterterrorism, where he worked until October 1993. Now, he runs a company by the name of Berg Associates, LLC. The thing is, in the US circles, Johnson has long been marked as an unreliable source. Notoriously, he said that the threat posed by bin Laden was greatly exaggerated in America shortly before the terrorist attack of September 11th. He was also repeatedly outed as spreading disinformation about presidential candidates. Now, Larry Johnson specializes in whitewashing the reputation of, you guessed it, the Russian Federation, and has little, if any, qualms about eagerly promoting Russian narratives and Kremlin talking points in the United States. So, if you hear this guy saying, let's drop nukes on someone, it's not really him talking. It's probably something you might have heard on Solovyov, and the source is the Kremlin, acting, by proxy. And with this, we end this edition of Break the Fake. Stay with us here on TDP World for more latest news and updates.